evening, everybody.
Evening.
My name is Elizabeth Harrell, and I am the owner of Crossroads Elder Care Planning. We are a company that assists families in understanding what their options are for senior housing and home care and senior resources by looking at their financial situations, which we're going to be talking about a lot today, their care needs, things that are important to them, and their legal situation. I have a 5-person team in Grand Rapids. I've brought along my right-hand staff member, Sandra McLeod. Sandra is one of my consultants, and I brought her because she's literally on the phone every day, all day, with families answering all of these questions. And so if I get stuck with something, I need a backup. So she's going to give me a backup. Yeah. So we're on the East Beltline. The way we accumulate our knowledge, first of all, I just want to mention that we're contracted through the senior housing industry, but we work with all of them in West Michigan to make sure that we can be very unbiased, and all of our referrals generally come from professionals. The way we accumulate our knowledge is by we are constantly going to all of the communities. We know exactly how they're all licensed, what they do, what they don't do, their availability, their cost, what their contracts look like, what their staff turnover looks like, whether they have a nurse, who they're visiting doctors. I mean, very, very, very detailed. We also have a lot of training from financial professionals and legal professionals and social service agencies to understand all the different types of financial considerations that need to be taken into account and the legal considerations that need to be taken into account. So when a family comes to us, and often we're talking to them over the phone, or they can come into our Assisted Living Resource Center, which is in our offices. I think the address is on the card. We're helping them, we're consulting with them on all those things to give them a full picture of exactly, their particular situation, because believe it or not, just in Kent County alone, there's over 100 different senior housing options. It's amazing, and that's anything from independent livings to continuums. I'm not even talking about nursing homes. So it's very confusing, but by the time we speak with the family, really, we can almost narrow that down to maybe 3 or 4, because we're getting right down to, what do you want to look out the window at? What floor do you want to be on? Do you like to garden? Do you have a dog? Those are really nice things to consider, but also, can you afford it? How long can you afford it for? Is it a place that you can age in place, or will you eventually have to move? And how do you make that decision? Because sometimes you would move to a place even if you have to move. So those are all the different things that we're looking at while we give people information. I just want to mention that I'm the president right now of the Council on Aging of Grand Rapids and on the board of Senior Neighbors and the West Michigan Healthcare Network. So myself and my whole team, we involve ourselves a lot in the industry because, again, we're flattered that Grand Rapids trusts our information. A lot of different organizations ask us to talk, and we want to make sure that we're giving very accurate information. So our goal is, there are still things that we're learning, but that's our goal. So, all right, I'm going to start out with just a few funny thoughts that I like. Old age is like everything else. To make a success of it, you've got to start young. So, when I read that, I was thinking, yeah, you really got to plan ahead, your financial future, but it's your health and your mental health, your families and everything else. But boy, that sure is the truth. When we speak with families, we often can almost hear from their stories when things started to go wrong. And some, a lot of times they are pretty young. But obviously, you guys are all taking a lot of initiative in your future, so that's awesome. And then I saw this sign in front of a business: no senior citizen discounts. You've had twice as long to get the money. I know, it's like...
That was an actual sign in front of a business?
Well, I found it on the internet, but it looked like a sign in front of a business. So I thought it was
May I
fun.
ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
How long have you been doing?
I've been doing this 10 years, and I'm the baby in my company. Sandra's been doing this. I know she looks like she's 20, but she's been doing this like 22 years.
Oh, you both look very young. I just popped in my
When
head.
I think about it, I think, wow.
And so it's kind of cool because Sandra, her background is in like admissions and marketing and all that. So she was at the front end of like nursing homes, independent livings, assisted livings, and all those things when she came to my company. And then Sonia, who's on the back of the card as well, she's a social worker, and she worked in nursing homes as a discharge planner and social worker. So she has like that side of things. And then I have an outreach person that both my outreach person and my administrative person has healthcare background too. So we often like roundtable cases and make sure somebody doesn't have a different perspective, because there's some pretty complicated situations to follow out there, or to solve. And we do everything we can to solve all of them. So, okay, we're gonna jump in now. Creating a financial plan. Why it matters. Well, I sat here and talked for 15 minutes before the presentation started. But it matters a lot because if you don't, when I say creating a financial plan, I kind of just mean educating yourself. I mean, a lot of times there's not a whole lot you can do. I mean, some people have tons of money and they can make, arrangements and so forth. But it's really just kind of educating yourself so that how do you pay for home care? What does Medicaid pay for? What does Medicare pay for? If I'm on Medicaid, where does that mean I'm living? What about an assisted living? What kind of funding, and are they different? And so it's a matter of educating yourself, and a lot of it is so that you're not either making the wrong decisions or not making decisions because you have misinformation and you're afraid of the information you have. So we have so many people that their parents don't want to move, or they don't, because they think it's home or a nursing home and nothing in between. I was thinking about a funny story I was going to share with you guys, because even on I wasn't going to tell you what boards I was on because of the stories, but on the Senior Neighbors Board, just today I had a board meeting, and the consensus of a bunch of my board members was that nursing care costs $13,000 a month on average. And there's 20 of us, so I was just kind of quiet. And then somebody who knows what I do said, Elizabeth, is that correct? And I'm like, yeah, no, it's $8,000 a month on average. And it's also not something that most seniors really need if they plan ahead. It comes into play, but not as often as the myths would lead you to believe. So that's why it matters. Considering finances along with care needs, again, that just kind of leads into the fact that they don't exist separately from each other. One of the things that's important to know is that most care needs for seniors are what we call custodial care or assisted care. Maybe assisted is the wrong word, because I don't want you to just think of assisted living. But I guess let's remember that most seniors don't have skilled needs. So when you think about skilled care, you should be thinking about things like IVs and feeding tubes and ventilators, or maybe people with really uncontrolled diabetes that have wounds, or different things like that. So most seniors don't develop those care needs. What they develop is they need, yes ma'am?
I'm just going to ask, is that what you had in mind when you quoted the $8,000 a month?
Yes, that is what I had in mind.
Skilled care.
Now, and unfortunately, the nature of this talk is going to make me jump around a little bit. Some seniors have to be in skilled nursing that just need a lot of assistance, and that's because it's the only place that full-blown Medicaid can be used. But if you were just looking at where's the best place for your care needs to be handled, most seniors can live out the rest of their lives with a home care agency or in an assisted living, because if you can afford it, because your care needs of having somebody help you walk. In an assisted living, you can have total care. You can be somebody who's unable to walk or even assist in your transfer. So 2 people need to use a mechanical lift to lift you out of bed. And I know this is depressing, but it can happen in an assisted living. And if any of you have ever looked at assisted livings or nursing homes, you would prefer an assisted living. And so would all the people visiting you.
Excuse me, Elizabeth, this young lady over here said, is the $8,000 an average for skill?
Yes.
Okay.
And I've got a slide that will go through all of those, but yeah, the assisted living is 4 to 6. Like I said, unfortunately, this is just something that just kind of jumps around. Okay. So safety nets exist. I like to tell people that right away, because that's another one of the fear things. Like if you can't afford it, you are just going to be left with no options. But there really isn't a situation where there's no options. The problem is, if you haven't planned ahead, you have to take what's given to you. You can't pick and choose anymore. So you know, one of the worst scenarios we see are people who have run out of money completely, need quite a bit of care, but don't qualify to live in a nursing home because they don't need enough care. You can't, it's not just because you're old and poor that you get to go to a nursing home. You have to prove that you need to live in a nursing home, and it's getting harder and harder to do that. So those are the people who are like, what are we gonna do? Well, there are some solutions for people like that. There's, and I can't go into every last thing, but there's PACE programs, there's state-supported AFC programs, there's different things like that, but the problem is we'll speak to those people and they're like, no way, you know, my mom's not doing that. And then they feel really abandoned by the system, but the system is there to help them. There are solutions, and we're really lucky in Kent County, because I don't know for sure if that's the case everywhere. We've got some great programs for people who really get caught in kind of like the donut hole of, so there are safety nets, and the whole idea where, oh, if you don't do this, they're gonna kick you out on the street, and you picture this old person sitting there with their suitcase left out, that's just a complete myth. Our healthcare and elder care industry in Grand Rapids is extremely caring and altruistic. There's so many social service agencies to help seniors that I wish they'd combine their resources a little bit, and you know, but they're everywhere. We've got the Area Agency on Aging, Senior Neighbors, Reliance, we've got the PACE programs, the daycare programs, Tandem 365, just a lot of different programs. So there are safety nets.
Senior millage.
The senior millage programs, which provide all sorts of services, Meals on Wheels, yeah. And there's even a big group that meets at Meyer Gardens every week of very active seniors that go and lobby our legislators to continue to provide more and more funding, and they never let up on them. So it's a really active community. It's a really great community. If you gotta get old, it's a good place to do it. So, boy, these slides are a little repetitive sometimes. Why plan ahead, you know, I think I've made that pretty clear, you know. One of the things that we like to say to people, we do seminars at our office on the fourth Thursday of every month that talk a little bit more about the housing piece, is at least start making a plan while you still maybe have $10,000 left to your name. When you get down to nothing, boy, does that make it hard. If you've got a little bit of money, there's a lot of different funding resources that you can qualify for, but once you're out of money, how do you exist? You have to be able to pay for your living until those funding sources happen.
Are those, excuse me, those seminars open to the public?
Yes, they're the fourth
What time
Thursday
are
of
they?
every month at 6 p.m. So tomorrow night is one of them,
Oh.
and they're, and my website's on the back, so they're all
Oh,
listed on
okay,
my
thank you.
website too. Yep, you're welcome. So, I always try and be like interactive, or I always think I want to be interactive with my audience instead of lecturing them for an hour, but I never do. But since it's on the slide, does anybody think they know like the different financial sources to pay for care already and just need to know more about them?
I don't know if this is going off on a tangent, but my grandmother went to heaven in 2000. They had some savings, but it's like, if I understood it correctly, I'm not saying she would have been refused care in a nursing home, but they're not able to have any savings at all?
Well, you can have savings in a nursing home, you just have to pay the nursing home.
Yeah, but I mean,
But to get Medicaid, you can't have any savings.
oh,
Yeah,
okay.
or $2,000.
Oh, that's, maybe
Yep.
that's what it was. And then when her savings was all gone,
Yep,
then it must have, Medicare or whatever must have picked it up then.
yeah.
Oh, okay, because my uncle
Medicaid.
had,
And
or
we'll get into.
okay, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
no, not at all.
Okay.
That's, you know, it's like I planted you in the crowd, because that's the whole thing.
Oh.
It's very confusing,
Okay.
to keep them all straight. So
Okay.
I've got them itemized here a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, absolutely. So the two of the most unknown of the funding sources really would be veterans benefits and Medicaid waivers. And I'm gonna explain both of them in a few minutes, but they're very interesting how they can be combined along with your Social Security income and make you all of a sudden you're destitute one day, and the next day you're living in like a nice assisted living, getting 3 meals a day and all your care needs met, if you do it right in the right order. So Sandra's almost a little better, especially about that order thing than me, but we'll talk about that in a minute. One thing at a time. Okay, so this is just gonna be a quick rundown to give you an idea, since this is a talk on funding senior housing, how much does senior housing cost? So private duty home care, which is what we also might call companion care, is always private pay. So if anybody has ever had a little bit of care at home that their Medicare has picked up, that's called home health care or skilled care. And that is after a stay in the hospital or an illness, something the doctor prescribes that is short-term, directly relatable to an illness or a hospitalization, generally. And it's not the same as private duty home care, which does meals and a little vacuuming and helps you get dressed and runs your errands and plays cards with you or shows you how to use a computer, or maybe just sits there and makes sure that you're safe. Sometimes that's all people want. That's private duty home care, and it is by far the most expensive form of care, more than nursing care. If you add up the hours, it's like $400 a day for private duty care at a minimum. Yeah, and part of that is because of the whole idea of the overnight shift, because these are not live-in people, these are staff people that come in for shifts. And it's complicated, and it's one caregiver for this amount of time, and then they leave, and then the next one comes, and then, you know, it's a tricky way, but there are some people that are bound and determined to drain their estates and stay home with private duty home care, and it's their prerogative. But that's how much it costs. Independent living, and I like to just name off some independent living so that, because we're all from Grand Rapids, probably, pretty close. So some independent livings in different parts of town would be like Villa Maria, Lincoln Square, Heather Hills, American House of Grand Rapids, which used to be called Glenhaven Manor. Sentinel Point, Heron Woods. Those are all independent living communities. What that means is they're communities that they're going to offer usually 2 to 3 meals a day. So these are not senior apartment communities. If you go to these communities, you are getting some amenities along with them. You're getting some meals, transportation, activities, and really all of them now have home care agencies on site too. So you can buy your care a la carte. So that all sounds really great, but the caveat is just make sure you know if it's an independent living community, because once you hear all that from the marketing agency, you're like, oh, this is just like assisted living. Well, it's not. It's not financially like assisted living because you can't use some of your funding there, and again, I'll get to that in a minute. And it's also not care-wise like assisted living because there's only a couple of home care aides on duty for maybe like 100 people. So it's not the same. Assisted living and memory care start at $2,800, although, you know, we just found some new like residential care type homes that are technically assisted living. They're the next step down that are doing, I think, some for $2,000 a month or something. So we're always coming up with new solutions, but generally, you're talking a minimum of $3,000 a month, generally.
Oh, excuse me,
For
I had
assisted
not heard that term memory care.
Memory care is just for people with
Like it kind of
dementia.
forgetful? Oh,
For people with dementia, and dementia is a symptom caused by any number of diseases.
yeah.
Alcoholism, Alzheimer's,
Okay.
car accidents, whatever the case may be.
I like that memory though, that's
Yeah,
much
it's a
nicer
more
term.
dignified way
I like that, dignified.
than
yeah.
our secure unit.
Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
yeah. So obviously it's the memory care that tends to get pretty high, and I've seen it higher than the $7,000 a month. But even the assisted living, when I was talking about people being able to get total care, it can definitely be that much, $7,000-8,000 a month.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. So, and assisted livings can be very, very different from each other too. They can be licensed either as a home for the aged, or they can operate unlicensed. And the reason I'm mentioning it is because it's a financial talk. If it's unlicensed, certain financial sources won't work there. So, and it's totally legal to operate an assisted living in the state of Michigan unlicensed. By the way, the home care companies don't hold any licenses either. So, And I'm not trying to scare anybody, it's not good or bad, I mean, I guess in a way it's good because it allows more companies to easily enter into the marketplace and create new programs and competition, which is good. A lot of government oversight doesn't always serve us all really well, but in a way it's bad because you really have to be a very educated buyer and understand how to judge the care you're getting. And it's hard if you don't do it for a living, right? It's hard for us and we do it for a living. So the next type of care is called residential adult foster care. I'm going to take out that word residential. I had help with this PowerPoint. And just call it adult foster care. It's just another type of an assisted living that's licensed as an adult foster care instead, and there are 20 people to a building. Sometimes the buildings connect, so it looks like a bigger assisted living. And then residential care, which costs the same thing, are like 6-person homes, like in neighborhoods. And you might see some of those, and you see people at them that maybe are developmentally disabled or mentally challenged or whatever. There's a small contingent of those that really are very specialized just for the frail elderly. And in those homes, the difference is the reason why you don't want to be ever looking at the ones, maybe you have a parent that suffers from like a mental health disease. There's all sorts of seniors that have bipolar disease or schizophrenia or whatever, but it's better to even have them be in just the elderly adult homes for the frail elderly, because they get to stay home during the day. The other programs, you tend to have to go out into different programs and stuff during the day. But those run about the same, $2,800 to $3,800 a month. They can be higher, sometimes they can be lower. But it's like living in someone's home, but there's a staff there. It's not the owner of the home taking care of you. That's another big difference. They're run like businesses, and there's a staff there caring for you. And they're getting more and more popular. They're really popular all over the country, and they're just kind of starting to get a toehold here. And we need them, because I have a slide coming up a little later that says something like 10,000 people a day are turning 65. I know. That's a lot. Okay, and continuing care retirement communities, when you see that 18, this is where it gets kind of deceiving, because even if you pick up a brochure or you get some information from a community like that, if you're paying $1,800 a month, which some of the nicest communities in town, that's what you're paying, but you're also paying a couple $100,000 to buy into their program, and then paying $1,800 a month, okay? So a lot of people are, they might have a neighbor that says, oh yeah, I'm at Clark and I'm paying $2,200 a month in an apartment there. Like, well, I can afford that. Well, it's very demoralizing, then to go to Clark and tour and get excited and tell your kids, I think I'm going to live at Clark, and they're like, well, you're way off in terms of your assets, because the continuing care retirement communities want to see that you have enough assets to last the rest of what they judge to be your life expectancy, and that's based on your age and your conditions, whatever, high blood pressure.
You'll probably touch on this later, but do they consider the fact that a person might have long-term care insurance?
They do.
Yes.
They consider everything.
They consider that an asset?
Yep, they do. They add it all up. They consider your income, your insurance, the value of your house if you want to include it. All sorts of things are included for them to determine that number. And veterans benefits, yeah, even if you can't get them now, they might even consider that at some point you'll be able to get them, and then they calculate that amount. So, yeah. So, try.
First item again about private duty at home. I've seen some ads from a place like Porter Hills that they have in-home care. That would be different than private duty home care if you were going through an agency like that.
Well,
And
no,
what
these
would
are
the
all,
cost on that
I'm
be?
speaking of agencies
Excuse me.
when I talk about private duty home care, and Porter Hills has
Okay.
a private duty home care. And so does Clark, and so does.
So that's in this 20 to 24 hour
Yeah,
dollars a
actually,
day
they're
range. Okay.
higher. They're like 24 to 26.
Yes, they are.
Porter Hills are?
The
Yeah.
continuums home cares are higher.
Are they?
They just are. The ones that are independent of a continuum are more like 20,
Mhm.
and then, yeah. So,
Some people say like about Clark that the good thing there is most of them know they're gonna have to put up at least 100,000 to go in to start. But then you're there for the duration.
it's probably more like at least 300,000.
Right.
300.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The 100-year-old that I just helped needed 130,000.
Oh my gosh.
But then when you're out of money, you're there and they're not gonna send you anyplace. They claim that the religious ones, you know, like
The nonprofit religious
Raybrook,
ones?
right, the nonprofits, they'll keep you forever. Where the for-profits, maybe you have to move along.
No, that's not
That's
really
not true?
accurate, no.
Okay, that's good to know.
You have a contract with places like continuums that spells out exactly when they'll keep you and when they won't.
Okay,
If you enter in at an independent living sir?
When you put a down payment like that of several hundred thousand, some of the places you get back a percentage of that
yeah.
You do, and you get to kind of decide that,
to your
right? You wanna
estate,
speak to
that
that,
comes back to
Sandra?
your estate.
Right, you can choose a plan, it might be a 50-50, so you would get back 50% of that entry fee.
Yeah.
It might be 70%, it could be 30, it depends on which plan you pick when you enter the community.
But the caveat is that if you run out of money, you have to spend that money before you go on their benevolence.
Correct.
Or Medicaid or anything. So that only happens if you've passed away
Yeah,
while that down payment is still with them.
so it's for the estate that really gets the
Yeah,
the
so-
return on it.
Right, so if you've run out of everything else except the down payment, then you start spending that down payment so that nothing goes back to your
Had a friend who put down a fair amount, but would get 90% back.
Mm-hmm.
The estate would get 90% back.
Right.
But her monthly was higher,
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
Because-
depends on your plan.
yeah.
If you picked 90% back, then you're going to be paying more than the
A lot more
$1,800
for the-
per
yeah,
month.
per
But
month.
if you picked, I only want 30% back, then you might pay $1,700 a month for the same thing
And
that
this is
your
an
neighbor's getting.
independent living, this
For
is not
$700.
assisted
Yeah.
living, which is just as expensive as any other, yeah.
I'd heard that some of them could be too, that if you only were there for 2 years, then you'd get a percentage back. Now, is that,
It's only if you,
like,
it depends, like, I know that like Covenant
Well,
Village,
I know this happened
those
in
B
Indiana.
contracts,
Mhm.
you have 5 years. After 5 years, you don't get any back. And those B contracts, there's A, B, and C contracts.
Ah.
And I'll tell you, I am not the be-all, end-all expert on those. I know enough to tell you what you need to know and what you need to find out and ask, like the very important questions that you need to ask if you're looking at a contract, at a continuum of care. And by the way, we work with all of them. They're fair contracts, they offer great services, but they're complicated. So you just have to, know what you're signing up for. There's nothing, nobody's trying to take advantage of anybody, but these are big, like, it's almost like, it's an investment where you have to evaluate the strength of the foundation even, that, because you're investing into they're taking your money and reinvesting it to build up their foundations and their benevolence funds and all that. If they go out of business, you're done too. So you really have to know what you're doing.
Excuse me, she mentioned that was in Indiana, so you're talking about Michigan, so this can vary from state
No,
to
there's
state, or
only
is it
three.
pretty?
There's only 3 types of contracts nationally.
Oh,
A, B,
okay,
and C contracts.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
The A contracts are the true life care contracts.
Okay,
That are like Clark, Porter Hills, Holland Home are
Okay.
really the only 3 that if you do the full buy-in and everything.
what's that called again, true?
Life contracts,
Life
life care
contracts is
contracts. Yeah, they call them. Those are the only ones that contractually guarantee to keep you if you run out of money, assuming you didn't breach anything in the contract. I mean, you might be there 10 years and kind of forgot that you couldn't buy your grandson a car.
Okay.
Or whatever, you know?
Before you went in?
No, after you sign the contract. You can only spend your money in certain ways after you buy the contract.
And so you may not be, oh, but
You would
said-
know, because you signed the contract, but the point is you have to make sure you didn't breach that contract to have it.
Okay, but this is nationally recognized, it's not
The
just
types of contracts, and
Yeah.
they're federally,
regulated or
yes,
whatever? Oh,
yes.
okay, okay.
just like an investment in
Where would you go to have help deciphering this?
a lawyer.
A lawyer?
Yeah, an elder law
An
attorney.
elder law
that
attorney?
understands the
You would
contracts.
see before you had
Yeah.
signed it.
Yes.
What does that usually cost about?
$300
Depends on, you know, the
an
thing
hour.
is, if you
Depends on what else
like
you want
kind
to
of come to us first, and we'll tell you what to ask.
Oh. So
And then it's just a
by the
series of
hour.
questions.
You're right.
Yeah.
But
So.
that'd be, you need to do that.
Yeah, you
If
don't,
it's
you know, again, they're
complicated-
not trying to take advantage of you. Some of the questions we can probably answer for you, so you don't
Uh-huh.
have to do that.
Right.
But if you truly wanna make sure, you know, every single contingency
Well,
is
if you don't have
planned.
anyone to help you,
Yeah,
you know, then,
yeah,
You got Elizabeth and Sandra.
and so, we'll all help you, yep. Okay, so, we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Skilled nursing care, those are, you know, nursing homes such as, well, Clark has a nursing home, and then there's like Heartland nursing homes, and the Laurels nursing homes, and Meta Lodge, which used to be called Tender Care. Those are all nursing homes. All of their beds generally can accept Medicaid as the payer source. And if you're paying privately, they're 7 to 12,000 a month, closer to the 7 or 8, but some of them can get more expensive. But if with good advice, you never should be paying privately in a nursing home. If you have money, you shouldn't be in a nursing home, for the most part. Like, there could be certain circumstances, but if you have funding, there's better places to live. And you know, even the nursing homes will tell you that, because the marketing people even tell us, you know, we send them to you because they have money. And, I mean, the ones that really care about the people that they serve know that they can do, the same job of care in an assisted living for less money, so that the person is more comfortable. Because nursing homes are medical environments, so you've got, you know, hospital beds and shared rooms and,
Yeah,
yeah.
Curtain in the room.
Yeah,
a
med
chair.
carts, buzzers.
yeah, that was when my grandmother at Heartland, I mean, not to, you know, that, but she
Yeah.
was at Heartland. for
Well, no, but
medical.
the thing is Heartland's a great nursing
Yeah.
home. We've got, I mean, a lot of nursing homes have a bad reputation, but it's really undeserved, because the problem is extremely complicated cases go there, and things go wrong, but, you know, it's really, really hard to care for somebody that's on 27 medications
Well,
and,
she couldn't stay at the hospital any longer, but she wasn't able to go home, not to go on much,
Yeah.
not talk too much. And
That's good.
so they had to find
Yeah.
my uncle and my mom, you know, the two children, were to find somewhere, and so
Yeah.
she needed more than they were able to
Yeah.
do for her.
yeah, and if she didn't have any money, that's
Well,
kind
she
of-
did at first, but, I mean, not to go on about her
No, that's okay, but
situation.
you're kind of creating points for me, because that's the whole point. Like, if somebody like that can get good advice, a lot of people that are in their 80s are either veterans or were married to veterans and can get that, or they can get Medicaid waiver. There's different ways to put some funding together so that they don't have to go to nursing homes. But unfortunately, the hospitals and the rehabs want to make quick and easy discharges. And they don't even understand. The social workers at the nursing homes or the hospitals, if somebody needs quite a bit of care, says you need 24-hour care, you need a nursing home, and they don't.
They said that they
and-
couldn't, justify her, I think that's the right word, to stay at the hospital anymore. She'd had as much rehab or therapy because she
Yeah,
had
the
a
hospitals
stroke.
are treatment centers. As soon as you're
Yeah.
stabilized, you're out quicker than ever now. And then the rehabs are rehabilitation centers, and your insurance company decides how long you get to stay, but it averages around 15 days is all
Okay.
right now.
I think they used her savings and then for a while, and then, but that's where she did die then at Heartland. So.
Yep.
My sister's currently in that same position. And they, what my brother-in-law told me, and I think it's way off, was their attorney told him that if she can't get out, she was in Heartland in the Detroit area, if she's unable to leave there, then he should come to him then. And it's like, That's way off base. I'm sure you're supposed to be getting this information of where you can be before you
I
end
didn't,
up
I
staying
didn't
in
quite
there.
catch the
Okay.
question, say it again.
If she was going to Heartland,
From the hospital?
yes.
Okay, for rehab then,
For
almost certainly,
rehab, but
yeah.
there could be the possibility she wouldn't get out. And that's what he told him. Then you come to me.
Come to who?
The attorney told my brother-in-law that. That's when you come to me when she can't get out of Heartland.
Oh.
Yeah,
And
there's
I
just a
think
lot of
that's
attorneys that
not
have
right.
different strategies.
Oh.
Yeah, that's not
helping
right.
you.
That's too late. I think they should have done
Oh, I
stuff.
see what you're
Well,
saying.
you
You know, like
probably
you say,
didn't-
she probably didn't need that.
She probably
She's
didn't-
home now.
Probably didn't need
But-
an
Oh, that's
attorney.
good.
is the-
Yeah, she
is the
did
deal.
get to go home,
That's
but
good.
I thought, that doesn't sound right to me.
Yeah, that's just, different attorneys, they have different niches. They'll meet everybody initially for a quick consultation, and then they'll work with the ones that they can, and not all attorneys, but
Well-
it's just the nature of being in business, you have to
Yeah.
work with clients that you
Well, not putting that attorney down, he may not have been experienced in elder
Care.
That's true.
law attorney.
Yeah.
Right, you never know.
I mean, not to badmouth him, but he
No, no.
probably did. Anyway.
So, we'll go to the payer sources. This is just a list of them. So, these are all the different ways that you can pay for senior housing and care. Private funds, Veterans Aid and Attendance, Medicaid, and we'll go through each one of these separately in a minute. Medicaid waiver, long-term care insurance, and reverse mortgages. And then the little note on the bottom, Medicare is insurance. So, and insurance doesn't pay for long-term care. It pays for short-term rehab and doctor's visits and medications and therapies, but it doesn't pay for long-term care ever. So,
What does that attendance pension?
yeah, I think that comes up pretty quick. It's a benefit for people who either served during a time of war or are the spouse of someone. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you more about those qualifications too. This table is missing the reverse mortgages because I added that in at the last second because it is a way to,
Yeah, they're looking at it more favorably now,
well,
according to TV.
yeah, right. Careful. Just so you know, the reverse mortgages you can use anywhere you want. It's just money that you get from the equity in your house. People use it all the time that don't even have any care needs, so you can use it however you want. But this is something you can look at later too. But you can see obviously private pay, they'll take it anywhere. The VA benefit, we're showing that you can't use it in independent living. Now, if you're in an independent living and you're hiring a home care agency to help take care of you, then you could possibly use it. You should be able to use it in a limited form, but you can use it. But if you're in an independent living and you're still getting around, going to meals, taking your own showers, doing all that, then you can't use it. And it's an important distinction because you might go to an independent living community thinking that part of the way you're gonna pay is a veterans benefit. So you say to the really nice marketing person, can I use veterans benefits here? And they'll say, well, absolutely. But they don't tell you the rest of the story, You actually, so then you move in and you apply for veterans benefits with the forms they give you, and you get rejected because you don't qualify for veterans benefits. Sure, you can use them, but you have to actually have them. So you have to be aware that in any one of these circumstances, you can use veterans benefits, but you have to get them. The community doesn't get them. They go to the person, and you have to qualify for them, and I'll tell you what those qualifications are, so that you know. Long-term care insurance you can use in a, and by the way, you really don't use veterans benefits, or the people we work with don't, in skilled care, because you have to have less than $80,000 to get veterans benefits, and if you're that low on funds, by the time you get the veterans benefit, your $80,000 will be gone, because that's how much it costs to be in a nursing home. It's so expensive, and you can't have Medicaid and veterans benefits. You can't stack two government benefits, so you'd be on Medicaid. So that's why almost no one in a nursing home would ever be on veterans benefits for more than a couple months. So. Long-term care insurance, you can use it for home care if you have a home care rider, but you can't use it just otherwise. A lot of the policies for long-term care insurance are they were written a long time ago. And a lot of the language doesn't really match what's going on now. Like assisted livings used to be like independent livings, and independent livings were more just like retirement communities where you had your car and played golf every day and all that. So sometimes when you want to use your long-term care insurance policy in an assisted living or a continuum in the assisted living there, it can get denied initially until you prove that you have care needs and that they're supplying them and that they have a care staff. Because some of them say, you know, you get to use a long-term care policy when you're in a nursing home. So you have to prove that you're in something that is like a nursing home, but they usually do get approved so long as you actually have those care needs.
I have a question.
Mhm.
What if, and I noticed that most of this is covering if the person is in some kind of assisted care or whatever, but what if, this is my dad, what if he was living with me?
Yeah.
So does any of this
Yes.
go into that? Oh, okay.
It does, and I can tell you
Okay.
a little bit about that right now. The VA benefit will actually, usually you have to show that you're buying care from an agency, but now if you go through the right people at the VA who know how to write the applications, your father can get veterans benefits and based on the care you're providing, even if you're not being paid for it. So you can use veterans benefits that way, so you don't necessarily have to hire a home care agency, you
Right.
can do it. And the VA will give him his benefits, well deserved, thank you for your service. And, you know, and he can spend it how he pleases. But yes, and that's a great question, but I just, and we'll get to this more later, but it comes into my mind, so I've gotta say it. Only get your VA benefits through the VA. Do not go to outside agencies that say they're VA. I'll give you the number. Don't
Okay.
go anywhere else because they have all sorts of schemes that you don't need. So that one, and then the long-term care policy, no, that won't work at all. But Medicaid and Medicaid waiver will allow for care for your father in your home, but it wouldn't be provided by you. But it would allow for care to come into the home to provide care for your
Oh.
father.
Okay.
Okay? But, so it's another source of care at home. And then there's just, you know, I have mostly up here about financial things, but there's social service type agencies, there's adult day centers, there's senior centers, PACE programs, and that's not any form of money, but there are programs that allow for social engagement and care for homebound seniors while their caregivers are otherwise working or whatever. So there's programs like that, and if you call us, I can share those with you.
Excuse
Okay.
me, what is
Okay.
Medicaid waiver, what does that mean?
Yep, I'm gonna tell
Oh,
you
you're-
about
I'm
that.
ahead of you, sorry.
No, that's okay. I'll tell you a little bit about it now, and then I'll get more into it in a minute.
Okay.
So the next thing then is Medicaid. Medicaid can be used in a full-blown Medicaid. There's two ways to use it. One is if you're just home and financially indigent. I could be on Medicaid, a 4-year-old can be on Medicaid. You know, you just don't have enough money to live on, and it comes in the form of food stamps or maybe a small financial stipend. We call that like community Medicaid. So if you're on that kind of Medicaid, you can't afford any of this unless you have care needs. But otherwise, full-blown Medicaid will pay for everything in a nursing home, like everything. You actually are still using your Social Security income. They take all that except for $60, but then everything is covered after that in a nursing home, okay? Medicaid waiver is a form of Medicaid. First you get Medicaid, and then they give it to you in a different form called the Medicaid waiver. I told you this was complicated. Medicaid waiver can pay for your care costs only. So remember, regular Medicaid pays for everything, but you have to be in a nursing home. Medicaid waiver will pay for your care costs, what they determine those costs to be, either at home by sending you a private duty home care agency, or in a community by giving money to the community so that their staff pays for your care. Their staff provides your care. So they don't give you the money in either case. Yes.
And I'm guessing you're limited as to which
Community.
facilities you can go to because of what they pay.
You are limited, but you'd be surprised to know that some of the nicer communities in town accept Medicaid waiver. All sorts of communities accept Medicaid waiver because there's a lot of people out there that have, you know, pretty healthy incomes. You can't, and I'll get to this in a minute, you can't have a huge income, but if you can make like $1,800 or $1,900 a month in Social Security income, the Medicaid waiver might give you $100 a day, so you've got an extra $3,000, and then all of a sudden you can afford assisted living, and they're happy to take you. They don't care. There's no judgment who's rich, who's poor. It's just who can pay. You know what I mean? They're businesses, and they just need to make sure you can pay. But if you have to pay with Medicaid waiver, it's no problem. Lots of more take it than not.
Yes.
Wouldn't you say?
I would,
Yeah.
yes.
More take it than not. So you generally though have to be in a licensed community. How does like the unlicensed communities like Walden Woods and stuff, how do they take waiver?
They're home care agencies.
They're home care agencies? Okay. So there's some, remember when I said there's unlicensed assisted livings? Some of them even take Medicaid waiver, which we didn't used to be able to say. And that's because the home care agency is qualified to accept Medicaid waiver. And then they pay the home care agency to take care of you.
cost.
Okay.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I have another question.
Yeah.
What if he currently is not a Kent County resident? How does that impact all of this?
It doesn't, not for Medicaid waiver or for veterans benefits or for Medicaid,
Okay.
right? Yeah. There's just some social service programs that might not leave the county.
Mm-hmm.
Are you a Kent County resident?
Yes.
And he's living with you?
He's not currently living
Oh.
with me.
Okay. Which county are you in?
Fremont, Michigan,
Okay, so what's that?
Owego County.
Oh, Nuevo.
Nuevo, okay.
Mhm.
Social services that you might get, like Meals on Wheels or,
Love
Shore
Incorporated.
services and all that would come through your local area agency on aging, which I believe is in Grand Rapids.
It is.
Yeah, because they're a 9-county agency. But in terms of this other funding, Medicaid veterans benefits, doesn't matter where you're at.
Okay.
It's just the social services, but your county is actually covered through Grand Rapids. Muskegon and Ottawa counties are covered through a different
Senior
area agency
resources.
on aging called Senior Resources. So you get it from the same place. So nope, you're exactly the same, whether you're in Kent County or not, for the county you're in. Okay, so let's go on. Okay, we're gonna go through each one of these. This is all written in your notes. The Veterans Aid and Attendance, oh, here it is, pension. Okay, so it's for veterans that have served during a time of war, but they don't have to have been in the war, they don't have to have been injured, they don't even have to have been in the country the war was happening in. You can be here filing papers during World War II, you qualify. You need 1 day of service during that time period, and there's specific dates. And then you need 90 days total of service. You need to have been honorably discharged. Right.
It doesn't make a difference if they, like my husband was 21 years in the military,
Mhm.
or versus 2 years.
Nope, 90 days.
90 days.
90 days.
I mean, as far as the amount of assistance.
No, it's the
Okay.
same amount. You did the qualifications in terms of the service, those are the service qualifications.
What did you say about just 1 day?
1 day during a time of war. So maybe you entered,
okay.
maybe you entered the service
Okay.
just at the very end of one of the wartime periods.
And then otherwise.
As long as you've got 1 day in it, the rest of your service can have happened after.
And out, when there's not a war, you said 90.
You need 90 days total, and of those 90 days, one has to have been during a time of,
Oh, okay,
Conflict.
okay, thank you.
yes.
Right.
How many days are there that are exempt then from war? When haven't we been war?
Yeah, right. Well, I know like some of these dates I know right off the top of my
But
head.
it has
You're
to
right,
be-
because they have to be recognized conflicts. So it's World War II, the
Korea.
Korean War,
The Vietnam.
Yeah.
the Vietnam War, and there's even some with the, I'm missing.
World War II. What was it?
Vietnam.
Afghanistan?
No, not Afghanistan. What was the one where we invaded Grenada and all that?
I was Korea.
anyways. But like some of the dates are real specific, like Korea is January 31st, 1955. That's the day they consider the end of the Korean War. And there's just no gray period. And we have those dates. I'm sorry they're not on here.
Oh,
They're on
that's
our
all right.
website or whatever.
It's 50.
Now, with the surviving spouse benefit, you have to have been married to your spouse at the time of death, not divorced, and you can't have remarried after the death unless you
One would think.
remarried a veteran.
And then
Because I've often asked, was your dad a veteran? Well, yes, he was, and then I didn't get to that next question
Right.
until later, but she remarried. And I'm like, oh, boy.
Did you remarry a veteran?
Right. Is your mom a
Because that happens too.
So,
Yeah.
excuse me, like my dad was, he was in during World War II.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and they got married after, I think he was out, well, maybe they were married, but he's been in heaven 31 years, and my mother has never remarried, so she
She would qualify for the
qualify.
benefit.
She would be,
The next step though is, see the eligibility requirements there towards the
Oh.
bottom.
oh,
You have to need the assistance of another person with at least 2 of what they consider 5 activities of daily living. Those are standing,
okay.
walking, going to the bathroom, dressing, and bathing.
Well, she's not here, but not to embarrass her, I think she is starting to get dementia, and she is getting more frail, and,
Yep, so those are things that the
So-
doctor has to fill out a
Okay.
statement testifying that they need that assistance, and that's
Okay.
part of the application process.
Could you go over those 5 again?
Yep. Standing, walking, bathing, dressing,
Toilet.
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 There you go, yeah. Yeah, so it's not, like, one of the key ones that you'd think would count would be medications
And meals?
and meals.
oh,
So you have somebody that isn't preparing meals and is like really suffering because of that, because it's so important, and is messing up their medications, and they don't necessarily qualify for VA benefits or for skilled nursing. Those are, yeah,
That is strange.
yeah. You need physical help. They want you to need physical help. Yeah. Now, if you have dementia and you can't remember how to do a lot of those things, then, you need physical help.
I think
But you
she's
can't
starting.
get it just from having dementia.
She has fluid on the brain, hydrocephalus.
Oh, really?
We can't get her in to see the neurologist till June 1st. I can see where she's getting, more forgetful, but I mean, she's able to take care
I'd
of
take her to
herself.
the ER for that.
Well, that's
I
what
really would. I wouldn't wait till July
Well,
1st for somebody with fluid on the brain.
Yeah, I talked to the neurologist nurse, I talked to her primary care, and they said she's getting some pain down the back. I said, take her to emergency if it gets too,
I would just take her anyways.
yeah,
Make sure that they start treating them.
right.
Surviving.
Okay, so this benefit can take anywhere from a month to 5 months to get. If you're extremely elderly.
You said
or-
a month, not 4 to 6?
No. You can get it in a month if your
Oh.
life expectancy is short.
Oh,
Or you're really old, but that's standard, like for your average person who just needs some help and has a normal life expectancy, 85 and just is really starting to need help, it's 4 to 6 months, because those don't get fast tracked. But if you're on hospice, or, there's other reasons that you need the benefit quickly. If you're applying for the benefit and you pass away during the application period, you don't get anything, even if you've waited 5 months.
What about people who go to the VA home? They don't necessarily need this.
They don't get that benefit. The VA home is a pay as you can afford. So if you have money, it costs as much to live at the VA home as it does any assisted living.
Does everybody pay there?
If they have money. If
If
they
they
don't
don't,
have money,
then
then they
what?
can stay there like for free or for their social security or whatever. So no one's turned away, but you don't get to keep your little estate
Yeah.
on the side
Right,
and live there just because you're a veteran. You pay.
but this
This
that
isn't
we're
the
talking about
benefit.
is not that.
No, you wouldn't get the VA benefit and live in the VA home. No, because it's like a double, it would be again a double.
Right.
Even, like, some people have the ability to qualify for many different VA benefits, but you can only get one, and this one tends to give you the most money, so most people want this one. So the amounts are on there.
But it looks like it's next to impossible to get.
No. It's not hard at all to get. Why do you
You
think
have to
that?
have the, what are those five, two of those
Two of
five
those 5
things?
things. So you need to have care. And you need to have less than $80,000. I can't believe I forgot that.
And you have to
But I
have
think
served during wartime.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, my husband was in the service, but it wasn't wartime,
What years was he in?
55 to 57.
Wait, 55,
Didn't,
January of 55?
January 55 to
So he
January
qualifies then.
57.
So he qualifies, because you, up until January 31st of 1955.
Oh,
Yep.
I see.
So as long as he's got
Yeah,
one
yeah.
day. Yeah, so you just hit the tail end of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the benefit is for veterans who have served during a time of war. It's just the way it's written. Yep. So, and yeah, you do have to have less than $80,000.
that includes your home?
It does not,
Does not.
not include a home or a
No.
car.
So that
Yeah.
makes a difference.
Oh,
That makes a
yeah.
big difference.
That's a
It
good
does.
question.
Mhm. Yep. But it's a great benefit, and once you get it, it's really amazing that, and the VA here, they're on Fuller, right by like the Kent Community Hospital nursing home. I never know what to call that, Spectrum.
Spectrum, like.
It's a
Spectrum.
Spectrum
Yeah.
nursing home or.
Yeah, it's
Rehab.
right by that. It's right at the top of the
Continuing
hill.
health.
They're on Fuller.
My
Is that
son
Fuller?
was there.
Yeah. And they are so like devoted to getting this benefit, and you don't have to wait in line, you just call them, they make an appointment, you sit down, they fill out everything for you, they help you get what you need, and they do it all for you, and they won't send it in if it's not gonna be approved.
What, would it be a good thing, like if I were to go there now and find out, or do you have to wait till you need this stuff?
Yeah, you don't need to go now. The only thing I tell people is if you think you might get it in the future, find your discharge papers now.
Oh,
Because if those are lost, you might have to apply for them, and it can take a few months. They're called DD 214s. Yeah,
DD 214.
yep. So, no, there's no reason. Although, it's really good to know whether or not you'll qualify for it.
That's what I mean, because
Right.
if you get where
So you can make a plan.
can't take care of yourself, and you're the only one who can answer these questions, you don't wanna wait till then.
Well, don't be the only one. Have a power of attorney that can help you answer those questions. For sure. So, yes, sir.
One of the confusing things in this community is that the veterans' home here is the Michigan Veterans Home.
Right.
It isn't
It's not
VA,
state.
really.
Right. Yep.
And people talk about it as though we're a VA
Right, which is in
facility.
Battle Creek, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, it's very true. It is run differently, and I don't really, I know that what you're saying is factual, but I don't know why it matters. I know how the VA here operates and how you qualify to be in it and how you pay for it.
The VA has a clinic
Yes, they do.
here.
Yep, down at the
and-
Metro
and
Health campus.
as well as in Battle Creek.
Yep, they do have a clinic, yeah.
Yeah.
They use-
But you, in other words, if you wanted to have, say, you wanted to be a patient of that,
Yeah.
you're not going to
You don't have to go to Battle Creek.
you don't have to go to that home.
They have the new, no, they have that new, no, not at all.
They have a clinic.
Yeah, and that's, if you're a veteran, you get great prices on your medications, your hearing aids, all sorts of stuff. And there's that brand new clinic down at Metro Health now.
And that's only for the veteran, not for the surviving
I don't know
spouse.
the answer to that. I think it's only for the veteran.
That's what I thought.
Veteran.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yes, sir?
Being in the Korean War, I'm a veteran, and I'm thinking that, can I have any other property than my own home? If I was to live with my daughter?
No, you
It's
can't.
not my home, it's rental units.
Right. You can't, because your estate has to be less than $80,000 to get veterans benefits. So if you own vacation property or investment property, that's part of your estate. So you can only have one exempt home. So unless you sold your home and used that as your exempt home, you can only have one, and you have to have less than $80,000.
Before I decided to collect from veterans, what if I sold the property?
It would increase the value of your liquid
Your
estate. Because you'd get money from it. Yeah. And there's now, it used to be, not even that long ago, a few years ago, that somebody could come to us and say, we've got $500,000 and we want to get veterans benefits. We'll say, okay, well, we need to put $420,000 in a irrevocable trust, which we didn't actually tell them to do that. We told them they were crazy to do that, but you can. And, or you could even just give it to your kid. As long as it wasn't on your books.
Not in your name.
The VA just looked at what you sent, and that was fine. Now they look back a couple of years, 2 to 3 years. They're looking, and they can tell quickly if
you
you know
did
they're
that.
not quite as thorough as Medicaid, but they can tell really quickly, especially like investments and stuff that maybe you're getting dividends or rent from or whatever, and then all of a sudden you're not getting that anymore. So there's a look back of about 3 years. Now, if you don't think you're going to apply for it for however many years, you can do something like that now, but I would suggest getting 5 years past it, ultimately. And it's tricky because you kind of have to give it away. You know, if you really want it to work, you kind of have to, it has to leave your name. Don't joint sign it or anything, that doesn't do anything. If you're truly going to protect your assets, you have to, you know, and you don't want to add to the value of your estate, you have to put it into an irrevocable trust, which means it's no longer yours, and you appoint a trustee to disperse those funds or manage them. So, and I'll talk about that a little bit more too. So that's the aid and attendance pension. Okay. Okay, Medicaid. So this is, remember I told you there's community Medicaid where you get a financial stipend and food stamps, and it's for like seniors or anybody. This is not that. This is the Medicaid that pays for everything you need in, you live in a nursing home. That's the only place you would use this kind of Medicaid, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. So that your assets have to be less than $2,000, and you can keep one vehicle and one home. And I'll talk about how it works with couples in a minute too, but let's just go through this first as a single person. There's a 5-year look back, and during that 5-year period, you can't have made any divestments. So what's a divestment? Well, there's a long list of them, but you basically have to have only spent money on yourself. You can't have gifted any, you really, it's even looked into if you tithe at your church, to be honest with you.
Really?
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah. You can't help a grandkid, you can't
That I
sell a
can see.
car at a less value than it should have been sold at. All those sorts of things you can't do. You can't put somebody else on the title of something and assume that half the value of that is now gone. None of that. Anything your name is on is yours 100% in the eyes of Medicaid. Even prenuptial agreements don't count. They're not recognized for Medicaid.
wow.
So, you have to meet a nursing facility level of care criteria is what that means. I call it LOCD, which is level of care determination. And I have a chart, two screens up, that will tell you what that is. But for now, just know that you need to prove that you need to live in a nursing home. And that's one of the real tricky parts, because you have to, it's getting harder and harder. It used to be you could just have a diagnosis of dementia and you get to live in a nursing home. Now they're
Chronic
looking,
respiratory problem.
yep, respiratory problems. If you're on oxygen full-time, 5 years ago, you qualify. Now they're looking at the symptoms of your illness and how that affects your ability to live in the community, outside of a nursing home. So it's much harder, but you do have to pass that. And you can pass it and live in a nursing home and then get better. And then they're like, you don't qualify anymore, now you have to leave the nursing home. And that's all regulated by Medicaid, not by the nursing home, so don't be mad at them. But they're constantly being reevaluated, making sure that everyone's in there is in there for the right reason. You can't go into a nursing home for mental health reasons without specialized screening. I mean, you have to be the right person with the right needs to qualify for nursing care. And it's getting harder and harder just because our funds are, Medicaid and Medicare, the programs are just really
Being drained.
being drained. A lot of people are using them, and which brings me to my next slide. They're not using them as much as they used to because you can't protect assets and go on Medicaid anymore very easily at all. So just to talk about that real quickly, it used to be, yes,
I was just gonna ask, is the vehicle in the home, what if you had $1 million home and a Lamborghini?
500,000. 500,000 for the home, that's the top amount.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure about the car. Do you?
I don't know.
Because you can actually, like, upgrade your home and buy a new car that's nicer
Yeah,
with your money. That's not a divestment.
so I could buy a Lamborghini and.
But the tricky part is if you do that and then you're on Medicaid,
To get down to 2,000.
right, well, like who's, you know, you still, even though you own your home, you still have to pay taxes on it,
Yeah.
upkeep, everything else, and you can't rent it because it turns into income and then you're over the amount. Or it turns into an asset. As soon as you rent your house, it becomes an asset instead of exempt. So they really kind of trap you. But to be honest with you, if most people knew what it meant to qualify for Medicaid, they wouldn't be so quick to try and do it. So you used to be able to do what was called, if you were a married couple, solely for the benefit of trust. So if you were a couple and one person needed to be in a nursing home and another person was staying home and you had $500,000, you could put that money into this trust solely for the benefit of the at-home spouse, and the other one qualifies for Medicaid and costs $10,000 to write up the trust, but you can't do that anymore. That was 2 years ago, and you can't do it anymore. And even when you could, I can't tell you the number of lawyers that wrote those trusts and then said, go to Crossroads, they'll help you find just the right nursing home. Well, people that have $500,000 don't really like living at Heartland. They don't want to live there. They don't realize that they don't get to go where they want to go, because the lawyers never told them. So it's really, and without getting into any moral judgments or about it or whatever, but our Medicaid and Medicare programs are very, very strained, and there are a lot of people who really have nothing and are getting less and less. So it's kind of, in some ways, good. Because I'm going to tell you a little bit more about how it works with a couple. It's not like the at-home spouse is destitute at all. So I'll tell you about that real quick. But by the way, if you do want to protect your assets, you need to do that irrevocable trust 5 years in advance. That's the only way to do it, if you're just a single person. There actually is one other way to do a little bit. It's the dumbest name, half-loaf planning. And it all I can tell you is that if somebody has like $100,000, they can give away $50,000, enter into a nursing home, whatever you gave away becomes your penalty, you spend your other $50,000 paying your penalty, and then you're approved for Medicaid. So $50,000 was saved. Does that make sense? It's really complicated, but you can do that. Again, though, what I tell people is go and tour the places that you're going to have your loved ones stay, and then decide if you want to preserve those assets that way, if you're okay with it. I mean, because sometimes you can get lucky and there's a private room open at Clark, and they'll take you in that way. But still, nursing care is nursing care wherever you are. It's much more, if you don't have to be there, you tend to not want to be. It's not very home-like. So with a couple, couples get to split their assets, and the at-home spouse gets to keep up to about $123,000.
About $123,000.
Right.
Yes.
And the house and the car.
Yes.
And the one that's going to be going on Medicaid the other half is assigned to them, and when that amount is spent down to less than $2,000, they get to go on Medicaid. So the at-home spouse gets to keep, if the estate's over, $250,000, gets to keep $125,000. Let's say the estate is $100,000, then they each get to keep $50,000, right? But the spend down of the one that is going to be applying for Medicaid, their $50,000 can pay for a new car, it can pay for new furniture, new roof, all sorts of things to benefit the at-home spouse. Okay, so it doesn't have to just be spent on the nursing home. And you don't have to use it in a nursing home. We have people all the time that will do that, and their spend down takes place in an assisted living, and then when they qualify for Medicaid, they go on Medicaid waiver. So you don't have to be on your spend down in a nursing home. Yeah.
Yes, it is complicated.
Yeah, it is really complicated. A couple other things, the at-home spouse also gets, their income generally goes up to a minimum of $1,850 a month and a maximum of about $2,800. So if the house they're left behind with, that's all based on the cost of the house or the expenses of the house.
Correct.
So if you have a house with a high mortgage payment or utility bills or whatever, and you can't cover all your expenses with the $1,800, and that's not just your housing expenses, but you gotta be able to cover, everything else within reason, then they'll give you more. But, so you have people all the time that are terrified to apply for Medicaid or whatever, because they only, maybe the wife only makes $600 a month, and she's like, oh, I'm gonna lose all of his income. No, they increase your income. So you can see that even though you can't protect assets, the worst case scenario is that you have a house, a car, and income of $1,875 a month. And I know that's not great, but it's not being left homeless either. And if you have anything less than $25,000, the at-home spouse gets to keep all of it. And the spouse needing care can immediately qualify for Medicaid. So if you have some assets, then you get left with that. So, I know it's super complicated, but I better keep going or we will be here all night. Okay. I'm gonna try and go a little quicker. Medicaid waiver. So first you qualify for Medicaid. Like if you call Area Agency on Aging or Reliance, which are the two agencies here that help people qualify for waiver, the very first thing they'll say is you gotta be qualified for Medicaid first. And then you can use it, like I said, either they'll pay for a home care company to come into your home, but only for what, 20 hours a week? Maybe 30, 40? Not overnight. They don't
Not
do overnight care ever.
The most I've seen is 3 hours in the morning and 3 hours at night, 7 days a week, so,
Yeah. But never
36.
overnight. So it's not the same as using Medicaid waiver in a community.
Correct.
Right, because in a community, you've got that round-the-clock staff, and they're paying that staff.
They're awake, they're checking on people throughout the night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's, you still have to pass a level of care determination. You have to have a gross income of less than $21.99 a month. If you have more, you will not qualify. It's kind of silly, but it is what it is. So, you have to have an income of less than that. But I'm gonna just go back to Medicaid for 1 second, because it's a question I get a lot. A lot of people say to me, my parent doesn't qualify for Medicaid, they make too much money. If you need to live in a nursing home and pass the level of care determination, your income could be $5,000 a month. If you fall short of what it costs to live in a nursing home, you pay the $5,000, they pay the rest. So when people say they have too much to qualify for Medicaid, they're talking about that community Medicaid, where you're at home and you're getting food stamps and stuff. You can't have too much income to qualify for Medicaid to live in a nursing home. I mean, if you did, you wouldn't. I mean, unless you just don't need any help at all. So you'd have to have $8,000 a month or something. So, so $21.99 a month. It only will pay for care. Rent and food comes from your Social Security income or your pension or whatever. So obviously less than the $21.99 a month, and you generally have to be pretty close to that to make that happen. Because rent and food costs close to $2,000 a month at most assisted livings. I want to just jump in real quick and tell you that you can have Medicaid waiver and veterans benefits. And the interesting thing about the veterans benefits is the entire amount isn't counted as income. About 70% is income, 60%? Something like
Probably
that.
60.
About 60% is income and the rest isn't. So say you have an income of $1,400 a month, and as a widow of a veteran or a spouse of a veteran, you qualify for the whole $1,100, so then you'd be at like $2,500, and you think, wow, now I'm over. You're actually not, because part of that doesn't count as income, so it drops you back down to the $21.99. So that's how you can stack those benefits And then there's a strategy to which one you get first. You get the waiver first,
Waiver first.
and then
apply for
the veterans benefit, because Richard at the VA will help you get only the amount of veterans benefit you need to not push you over the $21.99. And then you get the Medicaid waiver, and presto, you're in an assisted living. It's not that easy, but it's not that hard either, as long as you're getting help. You have to pass the LOCD. Okay, so that's Medicaid waiver. Here's the screen to how you get in, how you pass the level of care determination. They call them doors to entry. They want people to envision standing in front of a wall with 7 doors. You gotta fit through one of those doors to get into the nursing home. It's not quite that simple because you might fit partway through one door and partway through another door, but you're basically assessed and you get points. And if you might have some points from needing help, transferring from your bed to your chair, and then some because you have a wound or you have oxygen or you're on dialysis, and that's what gets you in. But these are the sorts of things. And like I said, this daily oxygen used to be like if you had that, you were in, but now these are not like the be-all, end-all ways to, you have to show that these complications are making it impossible for you to live home alone. So.
And this is the same criteria that the agencies look at for the Medicaid waiver.
Yep.
As well, so.
Although we feel they're not quite as stringent on waiver,
Right.
don't we? Okay. Long-term care insurance. This is not something I'm an expert on, but I think I talked to you about it a little bit before. If you have a policy, just be aware that the language of it might not line up to what you're looking at. But if you're moving into a licensed assisted living community or a licensed AFC, I never see people get turned down. If they have the care needs, they have to have the care needs and be in a licensed care community. And then you might have to appeal it once. And when I say appeal it, it's not that confrontational. It's more just explaining it with the help of the administrator. But the problem is you can't know for sure before you go in, because usually the insurance companies, they won't tell you until you're already living there. So it's a little bit weird. But our experience is that they get approved if you have the care needs and you're in a licensed community.
What was that you said again? They won't tell you what again?
Like a community can't say, oh, you'll get approved, your insurance will be approved here.
Okay.
And neither can the insurance company for sure, just by giving them
Oh.
the license number. You actually have to get there and then they have to see your care plan and everything else, and that all has to be submitted.
Oh, okay.
But
Doctors need to sign the
doctors
forms
need to sign
usually.
off,
It
everything
takes
else.
about 30, you have to pay the assisted living or nursing home first.
There's a waiting period of like 30
And
days.
then you'll get reimbursed.
Oh, I see.
The
Okay.
nursing home or assisted living is not going to bill the long-term care insurance. You have to pay privately, and then you apply for that reimbursement. Generally, the administrator helps with all of that paperwork so that you have the proper information to send to the insurance agent to get that reimbursement.
Okay, thank you.
Reverse mortgages. Okay, so there's a lot of words on this screen because I don't know this is just people don't get them very often. And they were so shady for a while there that it made me really nervous to recommend them to people. But the fact of the matter is, if you are a title holder of your house and you have equity in it, you can get that equity out in the form of a reverse mortgage where instead of you paying them, they're paying you. And an interesting thing is, a lot of people think you can only use reverse mortgages to like stay home because you are technically you have to be living in the home. But as long as you consider it your primary residence, you can actually pay for assisted living with a reverse mortgage. Just like a nursing home lets you keep your home in case you can go back. That's the reason your home is exempt. They don't want you to sell it. They want you to maybe go back. And this is the same way of thinking. If you apply for the reverse mortgage and you have it, you can take the funds and move yourself to an assisted living. And as long as you're still the title holder on the home and it doesn't, get sold or anything, you can use it that way.
Can you rent it?
Did you hear what she said?
Yeah, I did hear. I'm trying to think. I don't know.
Probably not.
That would put you
I
with
don't-
more assets.
No, this doesn't have anything to do with
You have to live
assets
there.
or.
But I mean, as far as using the money to pay for,
Yeah, you know what, I think
Being
you probably
qualified for
could,
that?
as long as, it'd be like having a roommate or something if you live there, you could be. No, one of the things that I was reading though, is that if you are at home and you're on Medicaid, like a financial assistance Medicaid, getting a reverse mortgage might get you off of it, because your income will all of a sudden go over the qualifying amount, so you have to think about that. And you can use the payments for whatever you want. You can pay a friend, you can pay a home care agency, you can move to a community. That last part, I know that many people will take their funds from a reverse mortgage or help their parents and then move to a community. Technically, you're supposed to be living in the home, but the language is, it has to be your primary residence. And so as long as, the thought is you're hopefully maybe gonna go back one day, it shouldn't raise any red flags, but, I wouldn't take that to the bank, but it's a
But,
thought.
excuse me, now that, what was it, the third thing down says about repaying it? Until the borrower I guess I didn't,
Yeah.
I thought reverse mortgages.
Well, repaying it, yeah, if the,
I guess I don't understand them, not to spend too much time, but I thought that, like, someone I knew did a reverse mortgage, so they didn't have house payments anymore, it's like whoever owned the house.
well, like, for example, if you, pass away
Yeah,
and there's, money on that mortgage still, they take the house.
right.
Right, and so that's their repayment. It's not like you're paying
Oh,
them money.
they get the,
They get the-
they get the
they
house.
get the
Oh, okay, I
house.
think that's what this couple told me, they're
Right.
both in heaven now, but they did a reverse mortgage, so they weren't didn't have to make it's like you sell, if that's the right term, you're selling your house to
Yeah,
whoever.
basically, you're selling a portion of your house
Yeah.
to like a bank who gives you payments for it. They're paying you for it.
They're paying,
But
yeah.
you get to stay there.
Right, and then they would have the house
Yeah,
once
and
you
you
died.
can,
Okay.
even once that, you've gotten all the
Okay.
money you can out of it,
Okay,
you still don't ever have to pay them back as long as you're living in it.
oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Yep.
Who determines the equity, home equity?
It's
The
based
bank?
on how much equity you have in the house. You have to qualify for the
Don't they
loan.
appraise it?
Yeah.
They appraise it?
Well, it's the value of the house and how much equity you have in it, and then it's just like any loan you would get, they approve how much.
But who is that entity that determines how much the house is worth, what
I
your
think
equity is?
Yeah, well, I think that would be an assessor, just like
Oh,
if you
yeah.
were gonna, assess your house for any kind of a mortgage, where they have to
Yeah.
see what's the market value of it. It's done that way.
It's like if you were gonna refinance, they have
Right,
someone come out and,
Right, or
whatever,
just, when you
assess
get a
it,
mortgage,
appraise
it's like,
it.
it's hard to get a mortgage for more
Yeah.
than your house is worth
What they
market value
say,
or whatever.
yeah.
Does that make sense? But I have to say, there's a lot more to know about reverse mortgages.
Yeah,
And
it's
I
not
can
that-
definitely, give you the names of some good people that can help you with that, but that's about the extent of it for me. I just want people to be aware that that is something
There's
that they
an
can
option.
do. Especially, I think it's especially cool for people who wanna stay home. So all their money is tied up in their house, and, if you get a home equity loan, you gotta make payments.
Yeah.
But if you get a reverse mortgage, you just get the money.
Yeah.
Right, so. Okay, we're almost getting towards the end. Qualifying for each funding option, we don't have the reverse mortgage up here because I added that. But it's just a checklist, there's nothing new on here, it's just a chart for you
Oh,
to
okay.
see that hopefully is a little bit more clear for you. All right, some considerations. Oops, my case studies. We've been kind of talking about case studies all along. These are my favorite things. These are just like stories of people that we've helped and some of the reasons that you really need to be prepared. So like, for example, an example of where you can kind of really get in a difficult situation is when you want to have Medicaid waiver. Like, we have people that come to us and say, my mom has $50,000 and $2,000 a month income, and we're gonna move her into such and such community, and we have to say, that's a really nice community, but they don't take Medicaid waiver. So when your $50,000 runs out, you're gonna have to leave that community. And when you have to leave somewhere because you have no more money, it's almost impossible to get into another community. So it's important, like, if you think you're gonna need a certain funding source down the road, move into a community that accepts that funding source. That's where, like, the work we do, we feel like is so important, because we're not just looking at what's good now, but down the road. So not everybody's gonna qualify or, get approved for Medicaid waiver now, but if your money's only gonna last you a year or 2 years, we're gonna really encourage you to primarily look at places that right now accept Medicaid waiver. And we're gonna tell you exactly when to start applying for it and what to have in place and everything else. So that's one example of people that can make really difficult decisions. They'll spend $100,000 or more at an assisted living, and then it's almost like they're fearful, or I don't know, but they don't tell anyone. Like, even the kids don't tell anyone, and all of a sudden they'll call us and they'll say, we got $5,000 left. And they're not in, and can you tell us about this Medicaid waiver? Well, where do you live? Well, such and such. They don't take it. Now it's really hard. It's not impossible, but it's really hard. And you don't get to stay there, that's for sure. You have to move, which that has become your home by then. Okay, so veteran moves into independent living community and plans on applying for VA benefits. We talked about that. The VA benefits, you have to qualify for them. You can get them wherever you are, but you have to have the care needs, you have to have the financial need. You can't get them just because you move into a community and get meals and medications managed. One of the saddest cases, which I've already mentioned, and it happens all the time, are people who are approved for Medicaid and ready to move into skilled nursing, but we can't get them into any because they don't pass the level of care determination. And a lot of times what's happened is they have divested their assets. So they had money, but they're like, oh, I want my kids to have them, or their kid, whatever.
Sounds remote.
And so they get rid of the assets, or then they have these big penalties. That happens a lot too. People that give away the money and the kid spends it all, and then there's like an $80,000 divestment, and the kid can't pay it back, and the nursing home won't take them because there's no way to get funding for them. Really horrible situation. So I could tell you a million more, but you probably wouldn't sleep very well tonight. So there's a lot of reasons to make sure you really plan ahead. So how to be prepared. The first thing I tell people before you do anything else, go and look at the different communities and get a feel for what it means to live in a nursing home, what it means to live in an assisted living, what it means to live in an independent living. You don't want to make that decision, you don't want to go to an assisted living and look around, or an independent living, and see, oh, there's meals, and oh, there's a nice home care aide helping that person, and there's the bus out front, this is the place I'm going to live the rest of my life, and then they fall and break a hip, and there's not any care there to help that person anymore, and they have to move. So you need to educate yourself on, and every assisted living is different. Some do total care, some want you to leave after you're a one-person assist. And the continuums are really different. They have very stringent requirements as to what kind of needs you can have at what level of care. And they're like, you no longer fit in assisted living, now you need to go to nursing care. And they make you go to nursing care, and it raises your rates 40%. Because you're incontinent, or you need
to be fed, or you're 2% assist.
A lot of times in the continuums, it comes down, they're creating a culture, and as you need more care needs, you go to where other people need more care needs. Whereas if you're in communities that are run more independently, I don't mean independent living, but communities that aren't part of these big campuses, it doesn't matter. They're just trying to care for people where they're at. And the continuums aren't doing anything wrong, that's just what they do.
What is again, you've said it already, but what is the definition of a continuum again?
It's from when you have independent living all the way through skilled nursing and you buy into it.
Okay.
Right, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Risk of protecting your assets, we talked about that. Understand your income, assets, insurance. We've gone through all these, so that's great. Meet with your elder care professional. That would be us. Because it really does help. We do have some one person competitors. It's kind of a weird kind of business, but there are a couple other agencies. They're not agencies. They're franchises, and we're I started this business, it's not a franchise, and I have 6 employees so that we can be real responsive, but there are a couple franchises that do this as well. And I think that's, look ahead, that's the whole idea of like, look how long your money will last as compared to where you're moving to. Kind of repetitive. The right attorney, I really would advise, even the right attorney, honestly, just really doesn't understand the different types of communities. I'm telling you, they just don't. And if one of them was sitting right here, I guarantee you I could trip them up with what people need and why and when in terms of their care needs. And that's why I said first look at where your care needs can be met and then look at how the financial piece works with it.
I don't know if you can answer this, because you're, I don't want to, how I want to say this, you don't want to be
Unbiased?
leaning, yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I wanted to say. Do you have any attorneys?
There's
that
a
you
lot
would-
of very ethical attorneys, like
but
the.
Are you able to
Yeah.
recommend?
Sure, they're ethical, they're very ethical, but I still think you need a more objective viewpoint because they don't have the knowledge of the communities. They
Right.
only have the knowledge of the legal side of
Okay.
things. They don't,
So
so,
you have to work with them and you,
yeah.
Okay.
and elder care.
I
attorney.
think so. I honestly think so, yes. Just to get some advice on what it means to sign these legal documents.
Can you answer this, or may I ask how you started to do this, that you got?
Yeah, I started working for a company called A Place for Mom, back in 2004
Yeah,
I've
or
heard of
5,
that.
2005. And Sandra actually worked at a property that I was contracted with, and that's how I know her.
Okay.
But when I worked for A Place for Mom, it was owned by a couple out of Seattle, and they let me basically operate Grand Rapids as my own like company. But in 2012, they were purchased by a holding firm that wanted to bring them public, and they changed the face of the company where I no longer, I covered like a 6-state region, and it was just a customer service job. I wasn't out in the
So
community.
you started working for a place?
In 2005, and then I started this in 2012.
Oh, okay.
Yep, so I started this company in response to my old company selling
Okay.
and really taking away my,
What you wanted to do?
well, the services that we had created for the Grand Rapids market, which are, I think, very important. The educational services, which a lot of our company is really based around educating people with information, accurate information. So yeah, I started this
Oh, okay.
to continue doing that
Oh,
same
thank
sort of
you.
work.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Excuse me, when you say work with the right attorney, what subspecialty of law do you recommend?
Elder law.
Elder law?
Elder law or estate planning.
Yeah.
One or the other, and only elder law or estate planning attorneys. We have a list of ones that we consider ethical at our office, or you can just call us or whatever. I don't really want to go through the whole thing right now. The ones that I would really, just be careful of is, like the really good attorneys at the bigger firms, they won't go into these whole irrevocable trusts. They don't really like to advise people to give away their assets. So they're more just talking about estate plans that protect you from having to go through probate and making sure that you have the right powers of attorneys or helping you with guardianships, titling things correctly, funding your trust correctly. But if you're talking to an attorney who's talking about protecting your assets or protect yourself against nursing home poverty, I would not use that kind of attorney because they're using scare tactics and there's no reason to. Now, if you sit down and you really have very good information and you decide you want to, like for example, I've had people who have like $700,000.
Wow.
I know, right? And so you can take, maybe you're just a nervous kind of person and you're afraid you're gonna go through all that. Put $300,000 of that aside into an irrevocable trust. You know what I mean? I mean, that might make sense, to protect some of it. But, honestly, by the time people need to move into a care community, the average life expectancy is 24 months.
2 years.
Now, some people you'll say, oh, but my aunt lived 6 years. Well, somebody else lived 1 day.
Yeah.
So the average is 24 months. People don't move into care communities until they're really
They
failing.
absolutely have to.
Yeah,
That's my mother, she
They've
doesn't.
fallen,
Yeah.
they've fallen, they're not
Yeah.
eating well, they have all these different
they've tried home care,
conditions.
they-
Yep, they've tried everything.
That's the last thing that they
So
want to do.
we always tell folks, especially real elderly folks, gosh, concentrate on the here and now. Like find the place that you're most comfortable in right now. If you
The
can afford
quality
it,
of life.
if you can afford it for 18 months or even a year if you're super elderly, just go for it. And there
That's-
are the safety nets.
Excuse me, that's my mother. She doesn't have a lot. I mean, she doesn't have no 100,000, but she's thinking leaving us money. My dad's been in heaven 31 years. And my sister would say, Mom, use my part and buy yourself something.
Yeah.
But she wants to leave
Yeah, a lot of people do.
money to her children.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
very common.
That's what, an insurance policy.
Yeah, and
Not the other assets.
I'm gonna talk to you guys about, yeah, something about that too.
Have them as a beneficiary do an insurance policy.
The whole thing too, if it sounds too good to be true,
It
it
is.
probably is. Life insurance policies count as assets too, with Medicaid.
They do?
Life
When
insurance?
when the beneficiary is it's somebody else, not you?
Well, once you pass away, but you
Yeah.
can't
Oh.
get Medicaid without cashing in your life insurance policy.
Really?
You're just a fountain of knowledge, Elizabeth.
Right.
Because I have one
Cash
from
in.
work, I have one from GM.
If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Yeah. Okay, baby boomers. So this is the future. Just a couple things I want you to leave you with, just thinking about some changes. So there's a lot of baby boomers.
That's me.
I just think it's interesting how many. They always tell us though, that our industry is gonna be so busy like now, but it's really like 20 years from now that it's gonna be scary when all these 65-year-olds are turning 85 at the rate of 10,000 a day. That's when it gets scary. Medicare changes, if you're in the hospital, you or a loved one, be aware that you might not actually be in the hospital, you just think you are, but you're under what's called an observation status.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, and you're being billed as an outpatient.
That just happened to a friend of mine. He was in the hospital, but they said it was observation.
If you
Yeah.
can be
Pay for it.
treated and released within about a 2-day period,
Yeah.
they honestly will most likely call it an observation stay.
Yeah.
And then you're paying. Now you can appeal that, and those appeals are sometimes beneficial. There's not much you can do about it because you kind of have to be there. You can't just be like, well, if I'm observation status, I'm going home, because they won't keep you if they don't need to.
Well, he's a vet, excuse me, so I think the veterans picked it up, but he was considered outpatient status at the hospital.
Yeah, it's outpatient status,
Yeah.
so your room and board and all that. So something to consider for sure. And if they do say your observation status, once you're stable, just be agreeable to leaving. Don't if it's a Friday, don't say, well, I can't find anywhere to go, so I'll just stay here until Monday. Because the bill will get really high.
There's also a problem with medications. They expect you to bring your own.
Yeah, I've heard about that. I don't have a lot of.
And then it has to be
I've heard that
approved
too.
by their pharmacy, and it's a nightmare.
Oh yeah, at the rehabs and stuff, right?
No, at the
At the
hospitals
hospitals?
for observation. Be careful.
Yeah, it's a
Ask
really.
questions.
And
when
I'll
you
tell
get
you
there.
again, though, just to
But if
stick
you're
up for
so
the
sick, how
hospitals,
can you
this is
ask
a Medicare law.
Well, have
This is
somebody
not the hospital
ask
trying to be
for it.
Oh,
difficult.
that, what you're talking about is
Observation
Medicare?
status, that's a
Okay.
Medicare law, that's
Okay.
not the hospital. And
Okay.
they could do a better job of explaining it, but honestly, half the people they're explaining it to are in pain, stress.
And
They don't have an advocate with them, the
Right.
advocate's in pain and stress, and it's complicated in the best of circumstances to understand what that means, and they've got 27 other patients, so they're trying the best they can, and they're not the ones that wanna make it observation status, that's Medicare.
Right,
Shorter rehab stays, it used to be, people will say, well, my parent just transferred to a nursing home for rehab and they've got 100 days. Well, you're entitled to up to 100 days, but most insurance companies will only cover about 20 at most. You are entitled to 100 days if you can show you're making progress the entire time. As soon as you level off and are status quo and not making more progress or plateau, then the insurance company won't pay anymore. And sometimes they decide that in advance. Sometimes you're still in the hospital and they'll say you've got 13 days in rehab.
Or they
So.
take it week by week, which
Yeah.
is stressful for the family who's trying to find
Never knows when.
arrange home care, or trying to find an assisted living, and they're like, well, I guess I have
Exactly.
another week.
Yep.
Or they tell me 2 more days.
Yeah, and tougher qualification standards to get rehab. If you have standard Medicare, you need a 3-day hospital stay, 3 midnights. But other, like Blue Cross and Priority and stuff, they can give it to you at their discretion. Medicaid waiver, it's a grant-funded it's not a grant-funded program, what is it? It's federal, but it has to be renewed every year. but it's saving the state a ton of money, and it's saving Medicaid a ton of money. So we assume that it will continue to stay.
And I just wanna say, even though you've applied for Medicaid, don't automatically think that my loved one is going to receive the Medicaid waiver. You then have to have your loved one assessed by the agencies in town, the
Yeah.
Area Agency on Aging and Reliance Community Care Partners. They will do that assessment. So it's not an automatic, oh, I've got Medicaid,
And there's a waiting
now I have
period
the
right now.
waiver, right?
There's a backlog,
Yeah,
let's say.
3 to 6 months.
Yeah, it's tricky. And then the last thing, there's an Edward Jones guy across the hall from me at my office, so he's always like, tell him about this. Actually, it was my idea. Okay, but this is for like some of us or our kids or whatever. There's a new law. Michigan was one of the last to have this passed. It was in February. And it is a way to protect assets. If you buy a lump sum type, this hybrid life insurance, long-term, it's like a hybrid of the two. So if, say you put $150,000 into this sort of a policy, you do a lump sum, that equal amount is an exempt asset when you apply for Medicaid.
Is that what you, that's what I did.
You did? One of
I'm
these?
glad it's exempt.
Smart.
Yeah, the equal amount is an exempt
did that
asset.
a while
And the
ago.
lump sum that you put in, once you have the care needs to qualify for it, you can use in any way you want. You can use for home care, you can use to pay for somebody to shovel your driveway, you can use to pay your neighbor to take care of you. You
Right.
can use however you want. There's no, as long as you prove that you now need help, it releases those funds 2% of the amount per month maximum. So if you put $300,000 into a life insurance policy, what's 2% of that?
Calculator time.
Per month. Anyways, up to 2% per month.
But that doesn't bother that other part, huh? Good.
That's 24% a year if I read it right.
Well, 2% per month of the lump sum. So it would be $2,000 if you put in $100,000. So up to 2%. So that's kind of cool. I think it's kind of cool. And one of the reasons is I still, it's still a way of kind of protecting assets, but you could have that amount as an exempt asset and apply for Medicaid and then turn that into like a Medicaid waiver in an assisted living and stay in an assisted living with that. I think like I will look into something like this, whereas the old long-term care policies, and also you have a beneficiary. If you never use it, it goes to the amount goes to
Pays
your
really
heirs.
well.
Yeah,
The
so it's
payoff
cool.
in the end, if you don't need it, is really good for the kids.
Yeah.
Can you turn your long-term care policy that you currently have into this hybrid? Huh?
I don't think so.
Okay.
If you guys want, the Edward Jones guy gave me his cards, and I can give you one, and he can tell you about it. Because not a lot of people are very well versed on it, because it just became a law.
No, you just said in
Brand new
February.
law, February.
I got it from
Yeah,
Hartford.
but it's kind of cool. And you do. The thing is it's such a good
Hartford.
program. You have to be pretty healthy and pretty young to get it,
You have to have a physical,
and you have to
The
be
nurse
pretty
came to
young
my house.
and healthy. Yeah.
check me
So
over.
younger than 65?
I don't know, but Skip
I
told
was
me,
50.
it's harder to get. It's a
Oh.
harder policy to get. He's
Oh.
encouraging
I was
people to look into it
75.
younger
when I
than
got it.
normal long-term care policies.
The
If they can.
hybrid or just long-term care?
The hybrid.
Hybrid, okay.
Yeah, so.
I have long-term care.
Okay, last screen. Oh, it is 8:45. Wow.
Boy,
Okay,
you're good.
this is just, thank you. And it's call us if you need us.
Wonderful information.
If you
Yes,
enjoyed
bless
it,
you.
or, enjoyed it might be
Absolutely.
the wrong word, but.
No.
And I can answer more questions if you want, it's up to you.